All right, all right, all right. Welcome to this episode of Parables from the Pit, your favorite podcast here from the Experiences of Warrior Week with me, graduate of Warrior Week 52, Mr. Brandon King. Welcome to the fucking show.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, hey, I'm gonna have you speak to the mic close.
Gotcha.
We had some issues previously with the mic and not being heard. So hey, Brendan, let's go ahead and roll back. Talk about your experience here inside of Warrior. Man, how did you find Warrior?
So started with seeing the Vegas video, and actually, that's incorrect. About a year prior, a buddy of mine, I think he came across a video, not the Vegas video.
Yeah.
Mentioned it to me, and I said, "Oh shit, that looks awesome," but then nothing happened. Life goes on, and right place, right time. The Vegas video pops up, and I get rocked. And right then, I knew I had to get in on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your first experience coming inside of Warrior?
King's Kit.
Okay.
King's Kit 3, and it was unreal. I mean, to say the least, to put it mildly, the experiences that you guys walked us through, and just the daily work was incredible. It was taxing.
Yeah.
Pushed me beyond a lot of limits that I'd had. Some things that I thought, oh man, this is dumb. I don't get it. But as you know, once you do it, and if you trust the process,
Yeah.
you get the gifts from it.
So what brought you to Warrior Week? Like, what was it that said, okay, I'm gonna go to Warrior Week now?
Right. It's interesting. At the time, I had just, so much of what Garrett says in the video was resonating, of course, and in my life personally. But, I'm a Marine, former Marine, had been to war, worked in law enforcement, SWAT, tactical stuff. And so I'd always gravitated towards things that pushed me and challenged me.
Yeah.
And I knew that there was this an additional part of me that it was almost like every 10 years or so, I feel like I've ended up in these situations where I needed to test myself and grow. And it being coming out of King's Kit and immediately feeling that calling that I just knew I needed to do this.
Yeah.
Almost a breaking down and building back up again feeling.
So what was the timeline of that? And particularly, truly, what pushed you to consider Warrior Week and make the decision?
Yeah, so I had really hit a shit spot just personally, and as so many of us do that find it here. I had, my business was going, it wasn't great. My relationship was going, it wasn't great. I was feeling just really like hopeless of what's the point. And I'm was doing okay financially, but just sucking across so many different areas until I came into King's Kit and realized that all of a sudden now there was a difference that was measurable, and I went, holy shit, this is the new me living Core 4 and actually just on a deeper level growing and being in touch with everything close to me. But then at the same time, unbeknownst to me, my wife had already hit a point, which I found out later, that the man I had been had already caused so much damage that I was starting to see some of the signs, which doing King's Kit was amazing, but I knew that I needed to have more of a foundation.
Yeah.
And I think that, it just was calling to me. It's been calling to me.
And what was the timeline on?
Well, so I'd finished King's Kit, and then I think a couple months went by, and pretty shortly thereafter I had called.
Yeah, so around what, 2018?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yes. And so then I end up calling you, and we have the conversation, and we set up. And it's funny because I had actually originally signed up to go to about a week later.
Yeah.
But you said, no, hey, this is the spot we have. And I ended up going, but it was 30 days out. We begin our
Sure.
workup, and I'd come home from a work trip, and my wife, or actually while I was on a work trip, I received an email where my wife said she no longer wanted to be married.
Yeah.
And fucking devastating.
Yeah.
Because I knew things were tough, but if anybody that saw us online or saw what you posted, life was beautiful. So I immediately immersed myself into the process of coming to Warrior Week, and did so.
Yeah.
You know.
And where are you today in your relationships?
So we're divorced.
Yep.
We're divorced.
Yep.
Upon graduation, I found out she had been seeing somebody else.
Yep.
And lucky for me that the strength and the king that I became in Warrior Week really prepared me for what was to come.
Mm-hmm.
And so where I'm at now, we're divorced in Virginia. It takes 6 months of actual being separated. It's now, coming up close to a year. I don't talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk much. That was her choice. But I'm in a new relationship with a gal who, surprisingly, when she had done work with a therapist, she had actually written this down, and I found this out after we met, that when our therapist asked her, write down your wants, your shoulds, or what the future guy should have, she literally had written down, I want a king.
Mm.
And so there were some really divine things.
That definitely. Your story is quite interesting because, we're not talking about a guy that came into Warrior and fixed his marriage. We're talking about a particular case where a guy that came into Warrior found himself, the worth of himself, and in that place stood by his worth. And it was a simple question. Am I willing to go to war for this woman? The answer is yes. Having gone to war, would she want to be in a relationship or not? That would be a choice of hers. Either way, that does not affect your worth, because a lot of people, listening to the podcast and so are used to the stories of the marriages that get on fire, right? The broken marriages that come in inside of Warrior, or okay marriages that are guys come in inside of Warrior, and on the other side, the marriage is on fire, and that's absolutely beautiful. But Warrior Week or Warrior does not stand for, staying divorced or staying married. It just does. We don't have a stand on this. Warrior Week doesn't have a stand on this. It's the process of empowering a man to own his choice and to fight for something that he signed up for, which is marriage, children, kids, and not give up on that based on stories. And so your particular story is the story on the other side that says, I liberated a king. And in that place, today I'm with a queen. And it doesn't mean the relationship that was bad. It was all part of the process of liberating the king. So let's roll back to the first night of Warrior Week. You come in, and we go to this place known obviously as the Pit. And since this is the Parables from the Pit, take us to that place. And how were you feeling? What came to you in that place that you haven't witnessed anywhere else?
I think for me, and I had said this at multiple times later, having been in the Marine Corps and going to war, and then going and being on SWAT teams and building a partnership with those brothers there, paled in comparison to the bond that I've built with my brothers now. And I think so when we go back to that moment and you're talking about going to the pit, there was shit that I had buried for decades. That there were different times in my life where I'm also, clean and sober, 27 years from when I was a kid, got that. But, I had never bared my soul the way that you guys allowed me to do. And with that, as we say, no guilt, no shame, that the bond that I shared with other brothers that had also carried such burdens. I mean, it's when I was 17, I jumped in front of cars on the highway and tried to get hit on my last night out there. Tried to get hit by a car and end it all. And I had, come out of that quote unquote pit as a youth, only to then decades later be back in this pit, which brings men here, where the emptiness and brokenness inside, feeling like nothing I'm doing is good enough. I'm not good enough. And I realized, of course, looking back on it now, but through the growth, that all of the things that I had chased after, the SWAT, the tactical, all that stuff, was all trying to prove that I was enough. And I had never looked at it that way. And nothing ever, God, all of the things that at the time I had looked for never allowed me to acknowledge that or to just hit that point. And so I was broken. I was broken, empty, broken, soulless. Just really the worst. Like suicide on the installment plan. Day in, day out misery.
Yesterday I had Dan Cerro, former Navy SEAL, here in the office. Dan, I don't know if you got to know him at WarriorCon 3. He was the guy on the stage.
Okay.
WarriorCon 3, he was on the stage, and he declared that he's going to go to this treatment. And he was going to be the fifth guy trying this treatment, right? This 3-day treatment they do for PTSD and anger and a lot of stuff. And, he's been, over 15, 20 years into war. And so he's gone through that, and his life has completely changed. And as a result of that, he's been the advocate to bring other military guys inside of that experience. And so far, there's been 90 guys. Ever since WarriorCon 3, 90 guys have gone through that, and only 4 guys didn't see the amount of success that he has seen. And he was sharing that, and he shared something really interesting, right? Because he talked about the concept of PTSD and like how we all have fucking PTSD. We don't have to go like to war to get fucking PTSD or be a police officer. Like we all have a level of PTSD that takes place from his experience and what he was talking about that takes place at early age in our childhood or whatever that is, and he the experience revealed to him that although he thought. For years, he thought the PTSD and everything that he had was due to war, really was due to his, childhood. But then, like, he was led to believe that is war because everything fucked up happened to war. But then he also mentioned that, he wanted to go to war. That was, it wasn't like they forced him to go fucking war. That's the place where he thrived. And that's the place where he was all of himself, right? This aggressive nature of him that was coming out to do the work that was required, but that aggressiveness was always part of him. And so when he said that he actually dealt with some of the fucked up shit that happened to him when he was a kid, with his mom and a bunch of other shit, and that release, very similar to kind of what you experienced, that release, like, made him accept his entire experience, which is the war and everything else that he's done. And he'll be on the podcast talking more, but it reminds me of your story, which you've gone to a lot of places, right? Like you've gone to the worst of all places. You've gone to war in the front line, but also you've gone to the war of like the Civil War, which is a fucking SWAT and which to some extent has even a more fucked up PTSD because of all the shit you guys see, right? I've had a bunch of guys here on the podcast shared at former SWATs and like shared like, hey man, you walk into. Like, you don't walk into either bad guys or, kids or wives or a dead child and shit like that. That's part of the war zone. Like, you walk into some fucked up shit in the Civil War. Yeah. And you know what I'm talking about. Like,
100%.
Like he described some of that shit is like you walk in and you can't comprehend the current condition of what you're seeing or the situation. You can't comprehend that another human can actually do that to another human, which has massive. So once you talk about like your experience inside of that, because it doesn't matter how strong of a man you are, right? It fucks you up because it puts you in a place that you're like, hey man, I'm part of SWAT team here in the United States, and it's fucked up that I have to see another American doing this shit to another American. And even more fucked up than that, it's fucked up that I see another human doing this shit. In the war, you got the war contract. You got, hey, what happens in the war zone, it is the war zone, right? This is at home, man. This is domestic shit, right? So talk to us a little bit about the impact of that on you, and how would, like, you coming home, how would you deal with that shit? Because, like, coming home, all you want to do is, like, hey, just take care of me, right? I don't want to be in charge anymore when I come home. Like, I've been in charge all day. Like, I just want to.
Yeah, 100%. You know, it's interesting. Before I just want to go back to that.
Yeah.
I think you're so hitting it on the head. Is that when I came back, because I was working at the time, I was working as a probation officer. They give you, if you've been deployed over 6 months, you know, they give you 90 days off.
Yes.
And it's funny because I literally lived inside of a walk-in closet with the girl that I was dating at the time, in my pajamas, typing out my business.
Yeah.
And she would come home at lunch and be like, you know, have you eaten? Have you? No, I'm just working. And so for me, my detoxing from the war happened then.
Yeah.
And amazingly, I was able to put the business together in that space, but I was so fucking just wrapped there. But just like you're talking about, the PTSD happened years before. And working in law enforcement, you're absolutely right. We see the things that here on our streets you can't believe. And it is, in combat, it's different. You're right. Yeah. There's a separation of like, well, this is war, this is fucked up. You're going to see fucked up shit. Yeah. People blowing up and getting blown up and all that. And then come home to see it. One of the things that sticks out in my mind, there was a guy, one part of the area where I work, they have a lot of wealthy families in the horse country. Yeah. And they have these long fences. And my field training officer, he told me when we were going through training, he said, hey, you know what kills more people up here in the northern part? Like, no. He says, it's the fences. I'm like, the fences? What are you talking about? On these long country roads, people fall asleep and they drift off the side in these long fences with the planks running sideways to keep the horses in. They end up crashing into them and comes through the windshield. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I'm thinking people getting kicked from horses. Yeah. Sure enough, one of the calls I went out on a couple years on, a guy had fallen asleep in a wheel. He's holding the wheel, and when I got there, basically the whole from his chin up was just the whole front of his face ripped off, and his brain was in the back seat, and he had fallen asleep. Yeah. And literally, his head went back in the car seat, and so he went off. And when he hit the fence, it came right through the windshield and took his face off and popped his brain out. And you know, I can think back to that now, and I think of it, and I still am kind of it's. There's a part of you that's removed. Yeah. Because, you know, if I tell my mom that, I've never told my mom that, she'd freak the fuck out. But there is a separation there. But the emotional impact of that surely comes out at home. Yeah. You take everything you see there, and no matter how much you think you store it away, you put it somewhere, it always comes out elsewhere.
There was a couple of things. Well, first of all, Dan just touched one on in the PTSD part. Dan talked about you talk about 90 days. Dan talked about it at least takes fucking 5 years for that transition to happen. And then he was talking about like, hey, there's 2 steps that needs to happen. Number 1, get these motherfuckers off booze, right? Because that's the only thing they know. That's the practice. Yeah. So he was talking about himself, how for like 15 years, it was just like, he never experienced soberness until the last 10 months. So he's much more clear just in that. He goes, just 5 days. Just 5 days off the booze, it's enough for them to feel a little different. So basically, he was talking about the 3 steps. Step number 1 was just take him off the booze for a couple of days, like 5-6 days. Step number 2 was he had talked about like some stem treatment to treat pain, right? Back pain, you know, because that affects sleep, and they don't sleep. And the number 1 problem of this growing more than what it is lack of sleep. So if we get the booze off, right, and get them see a little bit clearly, take care of the pain and allow them to sleep, because now they can sleep. They don't have the back pain. Once they do that, they're already in a better place, and they're ready for this, whatever kind of medical treatments that they have for this PTSD patients. But the idea is like, if you put in a guy that still doesn't sleep or still has pain and still like is drinking, it's going to be really hard going into that medical treatment, because he's going to see the worst of it, right? And then he was talking about this whole 5-year transition, meaning that initially go through this process and then allowing the 5-year transition to happen between, you know, what happened at war and becoming a civilian. And maybe in your case, like indirectly, maybe that's the amount of time that it took, or it didn't, or you had a shortcut to it. But the point is that the PTSD happens way earlier, and there's some level of treatment. There's also treatment. Basically, these treatment, what they do is that they allow you to go back to some of the story in your childhood and rewrite them. Right? That's what the drugs do, and so on, and the medical drugs, and it's all supervised by doctors. Amazing, 90 people so far results. But then there are a few individuals that come to Worry Week. Like they're not that many, but you're one of them. There is a couple other Navy SEAL guys that came into Worry Week, and which, number one, requires a level of humbleness, right? You got to be fucking humble to do this shit, or else you're like, fuck these guys, fuck this whole thing, this is like bullshit. But you're coming as a student because, you surrender to the process, and like you said, you may think some of the stuff is stupid, but at the end of the process, you put it all together, and you see the results for you, and that all that matters. And so you're one of the guys, Derek Keller. Derek Keller is another guy.
Just heard from him.
His podcast was like, I mean, dude, he shared like vibrantly how the fucking, like, how people blew up in his unit in the, like, we're talking about it like for 40 minutes just on that aspects. But he was okay to talk about it because he's, 2 years ago he would fucking freak out talking about that. But there are a few individuals that are able to do that, throughout this process, giving themselves permission to rewrite some of the stories. And so talk to us a little bit about, like, how did that play for you?
Well, self-awareness and emotional intelligence, I think, is huge, huge, huge. Because in training, of course, being a Marine, right? I mean, I in no way can compare. And I know I'm not supposed to compare, but a SEAL that's been operational for 15 years.
Sure.
Right? So badass. But the willingness, as you always talk about, the willingness to let down all of that shit. That, you go to boot camp and they shave your head and it's supposed to be, oh, we're all equal. But now you come out, now you're a Marine or a SWAT guy and this and that. Oh, I've done this, done that. One of the guys that used to be on my team that would train, he would say, when he'd give his bio, it was pretty incredible, but he'd tell the group, he's like, none of that means shit if today my training, it sucks. And, when there was a couple years ago, I was...
That's well said, bro.
100%. I was, a couple years ago, I was asked to speak to 600 police officers down in Texas, and I was given this keynote, and I kind of led with the same thing because I'm in a room filled with some badass folks right, in this national conference. And it was a good bit of feeling like, holy shit, I can't even believe I'm getting this opportunity. Yeah. But some of my resume, it looks pretty good on paper, right? But none of that means shit if I do a terrible job teaching. And I think that, unfortunately, a lot of the, guys, I just had a reunion with some of my devil dogs from the war. And I hadn't seen so many of them since the war. And it was really fucking interesting. My new girlfriend went with me. Yeah. And afterwards, we were in the car, and she was like, holy shit. Because there are guys that I went there with that are fucked up. And one of them in particular, he's doing all kinds of cool operating shit and, super squirrel shit.
Sure.
And he literally pulled me aside and we were talking. I'm just like, hey, man, it's so good to see you. And he's like, man, he says, I feel like I'm doing life wrong. And I was like, what are you talking about, man? Because I'm looking at him, and he's doing all this ninja shit. And I look at that like, oh, my God, that must be so fun to go do all this. And he's saying, no, I don't have he has no family, no nothing, no connection. And so the gratitude that I have for the work that I've done prior to even coming to Warrior, just to be willing to let down the fucking ego. In particular, when I was, one of the exercises at the time for King's Kit was go meet my 7-year-old self. And it took me 3 days, or at least 3 attempts. I think it was over a day and a half or something.
Yes.
You gave it was a weekend, I think, if I remember correctly.
Correct, a weekend, man.
Okay. And I felt stupid as shit. But the last time I met him, and I was crying my eyes out. And it was incredible. But you have to be willing to drop that ego and recognize my life is in shit right now. So I better trust the process. I better trust what you're telling me, because the way I've been doing it, and we say in AA, your best thinking got you here. Yeah. So if your life was so great, you fucking chose it. Yeah. So where are you now? If you're recognizing your life is shit right now, then you need to be willing to take that outside.
You know, it's crazy. You know, as we, man, we carry so much stress. We carry so much. We just carry so much, man. Like, you know, like we and we are conditioned to keep. You know what I'm saying? We are just conditioned to keep, as if like keeping is somehow is gonna paint an image of a loyal self, like loyalty. If you keep it, you're loyal, right? And the truth is, like, loyalty is like unspoken. The minute you start like fucking talking about loyalty, man, you already spoiled the fucking act of loyalty. and inside of that, just think about it. As kids, all the way till now, we are just conditioned to keep. Even something like happiness, as fucked up as it sounds, we are conditioned to keep happiness, right? So this idea of keeping continuously puts a distance from like the ability to let go, right? And what I found coherent inside of this conversation today is that keeping doesn't mean shit if your training doesn't go well today.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what the guy said. That's what you said in front of 600 officer. Is like, listen, man, here's who it was, right? Here's who it is right now.
Yeah.
Like right now. And when you think about that way, you bring it to that simplicity, everything that was is just backing up what is right now.
Yeah.
And we fuck up what is right now constantly by sending our thoughts in the future, a future that doesn't exist, that is not guaranteed, that could be taken away easily from us, or we like it is a concept. The future is not a reality, it is a concept. What is right now, right? And what we have is everything that's kind of like backed us up. The fucked up experiences, the great experiences, the pains that we carry, and the happiness that we carry. Like, think about that. Like, if we don't keep pain, right? That's a natural concept. Don't keep the pain and you'll be pain free. Okay, well, don't keep the fucking happiness too. Like, because then you're like, almost if you rely on the cocaine of the past, on the drug of the past, give me a line of the happiness of the past so I can borrow the past and be happy now, while you rob from now. You become your own thief, right? You thief, like the thief of joy in the space right now. And all it is like, you said it well. It's like, none of that shit matter unless if my training sucks today, none of that shit matter. Which means what? If I'm not present today, who gives a fuck with all the accomplishment?
Yeah, 100%.
And so that comes into play in our relationship with our spouses, our significant others, our wives, our kids, also our clients, the people we care for, our brothers. You know, so it is a fucked up concept, but it's so true. And like guys that actually fall in love with the truth, but don't dictate it. You know what I mean? You fall in love with it, but don't dictate it on others. It's like, hey, listen, like I just accept my truth and I speak the truth. Those guys, man, they don't have that many friends.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody want to hear this shit.
Right.
Don't keep happiness.
That's
like
right.
most people are listening to this. Well, our audience is pretty cool, but if you're new at this, you're like, man, fuck this guy. I'm listening to Joe Rogan.
Right.
Because I'm gonna get some real content there. But the reality is, Joe Rogan is awesome. But like, how real does Joe Rogan get about the totality of who is?
You know, you just reminded me when I separated from my wife, when I came home from Warrior Week and that shit all went down, I had bought a house for my mom that was right in this neighborhood, and I was moving, my shit there, and as I was trying to slim stuff down, I was throwing away. I had a lot of certificates, a lot of plaques, and different things from over the years, because in boot camp, my senior drill instructor said, one day you're going to have your Love Me wall. And I'm like, what's a Love Me wall? And the Love Me wall, he said, you're going to put all your certificates up behind you, so that way you can sit back and look at your Love Me wall. And for years, I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah,
right?
man.
So and it's good.
Yeah.
You want to see your accomplishments. But so I was throwing them away. I was taking photographs
Yeah.
and throwing them in the trash. My mom's like, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?" I said, "No, Mom." I said, "I'm done with those."
Mm.
She's like, "Why? What? This is your whole life."
Mm.
And it hit me so hard because I was like, I said, "No, Mom."
Mm.
I said, "That's an award from the police academy 18, however many years ago." I said, "I'm making room for the new ones that I need to put up."
Yes.
Because, again, sniper school, cool shed, hostage rescue school, cool things.
Yeah, very cool.
Do I remember most of it? Fuck no, right? But I went through it. I did it. But at some point, that shit I did then, I need to make room for the new things.
Yes.
What am I going after? The whole thing you guys taught. What am I doing now?
Yeah.
What am I going after now? Where am I going in my next 90 days, in my next quarter? None of that shit matters anymore.
This science of letting go, or this art, or this passion, like, is literally the hardest fucking thing.
Yeah.
Because let's say you let go of something, then this new thing you start working on, like, only to know that you're going to let it go, and then you're like, hold on, man. If I'm about to build this, or I'm about to create this, only to let it go one day, then maybe I shouldn't go all in building it. But then as the practice rounds come in, you always go all in building this. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, time to shift. Like, it did what it needed to do.
Right.
Time to go. Right? And so by ourself, it's difficult to have that perspective because we're caught up in building it.
Hell yeah.
It absolutely requires a perspective of a mentor, of a guy that at least we fucking trust, right? Of another man that has walked in our shoes, right? Can't really listen to a perspective of a guy that hasn't walked in our shoes. Like, you'll have really difficult time listening to a 24-year-old telling you about some shit.
Right.
So I had this guy hit me up on Instagram. He's like, he's like 19 or whatever. He's like, no, I'm marketing this and that. I'm like, bro, no, we're good. He's like, no, you're missing out. You were being stupid, or you're ignorant. You're missing out on the possibility, blah, blah, blah. I figured this shit out. Nah. So I'm listening. I'm like, you know what? He may be right, because I may be a fucking ignorant here, because I don't know all these shit about, like, this is a new modern shit inside of Instagram. And so this shit he's talking about, the fact that I don't know what the fuck this guy's talking about, it's proof that I don't know about it. So I'm going to give the credit to him about that. So I told him, I said, listen, man, like, I respect the shit that you just wrote here. And I copy-pasted some of the shit. I put it back in there because I didn't know what the fuck it was. I'm just going to... I said, hey, I respect that you know that, because I don't know that shit, right? And inside of that, like, you may be absolutely right about those. But here's what I know. Like, I know business, and you don't know business. Right? So from that perspective, my answer is no. So take it as you want. Like, I give you respect for that specific piece of it. But overall business, you don't know. So you can't tell me that, oh, this is going to happen, and this and that. And when you can, but it's like, I won't take that in at all. And so, he kind of took it humbly. And again, 2 days later, he went back to, hey, you're missing out. So, but, 19-year-old. But the point is like, like, we need someone that has walked into our shoes, and somebody somebody that understands totality, man. Like, somebody that knows everything, like body, being, balance, business, like somebody that lives in fucking harmony, knows that the decision of business impacts so many, or a decision in our family impacts all the other areas. 100%. When that perspective comes, it puts you in a place where you're like, time to let go. What if I would let go? Which forces you to what? To put new certificates on, right? Right. Go to work and recreate.
There's a kind of out of this last year, there's a new idea of what I want to do, and part of it is built on the word rise.
Yeah.
And ruthless integrity and simple execution. Rise.
Yeah.
Because,
I like that.
So I just trademarked it, by the way.
Yeah. Hey, if you're taking this, we will snipe you down from here.
That's it. But the idea being, the integrity, you have to be ruthless with, as we know, core 4, ruthless. If I don't execute and make it, and it's interesting because I think a lot of we're encouraged to set impossible targets. But without the right frame from a mentor or somebody who's walked it before, you hear that and go, I'm going to set this impossible target. What the fuck? I'm never going to reach it.
Yeah.
But without knowing that there's the steps in the reverse engineering and looking at how am I going to get there, it remains impossible.
Yes.
But I think that when you were saying that last bit, it hit me hard. Like when you have that clarity, and I feel for me, there's been very few times, but there's been moments where I have reached that moment of feeling like, holy fuck, I'm on fire.
And again, it's not scientifically proven, but from my experience in life, and as an observer of other people's experience in life, it just seems to happen every I don't know what your experience is, but every 5 years or so, there is that pivoting point. There's that change. Scientists like to call it the quantum leap. Like there's this thing that happens every 5 years in our lives that shifts, right? There's a shift that I don't know if it has to do with the fucking moon cycle or where the sun is. But it seems to be, at least in the calendar of my life, that this is what it's happened, and I've seen it in a few other brothers as well. That every 5 years is this quantum leap that is called upon us in order to execute. Which brings us to the whole point of, man, like if you don't have this art and science, or at least this training of letting go, it's going to be very difficult to have that perspective. And when you start talking to a guy that doesn't have the training of letting go, and you're like, bro, set yourself an impossible target. What do you think his first thing he's going to do? He's going to write down something that is big, fine. But then you say, okay, so you're going to do that? He's like, yes. And you're like, how? And he starts talking. And you're like, stop. He's like, what? He's like, that's not an impossible target. Why? Well, because your mind already knows how to get it. Like you're telling. An impossible target is a target you put down, and when I ask you this question, you're like you don't know anything. You don't have an answer because it is impossible. Like it is impossible at this point, right? Let's say you're taking away $200,000 a year. And say my impossible target is going to be $2 million takeaway, 10 times what I'm taking. Okay, so you're saying by next year now you're going to take $2 million away. How are you going to do that? Okay, that's an impossible target. It is impossible. Doesn't mean that it's an actual target, but we want to talk about impossible. Let's talk about a sniper, right? What's the distance that is fucking impossible? Right. Yeah. What is it, like 10 miles?
Well, no, it's shorter than that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
the big
I know
kill was about a mile and
yeah, a mile. Some we've seen
Canadian,
that. Yeah, fucking Canadian.
Yeah.
We've seen the mile hits, right? Like so, like say 2 mile, right, or 3 mile. Yeah. Like, how are you gonna hit it as a sniper? How are you gonna hit an object 3 miles away? Can it be possible?
Sure. Right type of artillery, sure.
Right type of artillery, scope, fucking, maybe the weather that day, like a lot of who knows, right? But it's like we haven't gone there yet. Right? Or the technology's evolved on something else, which is, remote rockets or whatever, like, 100 miles away. But the impossible target to set that and then not have any training on creating and letting go. Like these concepts, man, are not going to be concept for rookies. That's my fucking point. Yeah. Like it's not going to be for a guy that is 22, 23, that it wants to start a business or even fucking start a family.
You haven't lived enough yet.
Dude. Like how you going to fucking let go if you haven't, truly created a house, connections. You get married. 1 year doesn't mean shit.
Right.
2 year doesn't mean shit. 3 year doesn't mean shit. Like you got to wait until the struggles comes in. And then when the struggles come in or not, like you got to go through as a man through all the temptation cycle. And then figure out like, hey man, do you have the skills of a high temptation management or you're just a low temptation guy? Like where you at on that? Because I can guarantee you there's tons of temptation. Sex, drug, money, like you name it. Gambling, it just is. Temptation to do wrong, to steal. Like, it's all there. Yeah. You and I have both been exposed to it at that age.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're fucking saints. It's because somehow, somewhere, we navigated through the land of temptation. And here we are sitting with some level of wisdom, right? Mid-age, 40s, whatever the fuck, some level. 40, 50 years to go. Imagine that.
That's the crazy shit right there, is to think, if we live, long enough, to think, I hope to look back and go, holy shit, I didn't know a thing. I mean, it drives that point home. Was that at 20, at 15, 19, whatever, early 20s. I look back, and getting clean and sober, I had the opportunity sitting around other sober folks in meetings that their wealth of experience. And I look back now and, I'm going, holy shit, I thought I'd learned something at 10 years, at 15 years.
But think about the excitement and the passion right now, right? Like when you think about you're sitting here, you're doing this work on yourself. It's exciting to have 40 years of this kind of wisdom and be back on this podcast, you and I, 40 years from now. And like, imagine the shit that we're talking and we're teaching, right? Because once you start accepting that you have everything in you to teach, right? That you can teach from a place of actually living, and like that's happiness right there. Because now all the fucking certification, you now put it in use every single day.
Absolutely.
Like every single day. And it's service driven because you're serving, right? You're not putting it out there to be popular. Like this podcast, definitely not going to be fucking popular on this podcast. I can guarantee you, but it's not to be popular, man. And it's truly to express what you live and leave a footprint as part of your journey, your legacy. So 40 years from now, you and I sitting here, old, it's excited and passionate still to talk and teach, which brings the drive of just being excited about life. When I say that, man, everything fades away, like money, everything, kind of like everything else fades away, but there's two chairs and me and you 40 years from now. Everything else fades away, like as if nothing has any importance but that moment of us sitting here and ability of us to express. Here's a roadmap for the past 80 years that both you and I have taken. Mistakes, we've done many, right? But at one point, we learn that we're not going to make the same mistake twice because the second time it becomes a choice, it's no longer a fucking mistake.
There was I'm pretty sure it's still on my Facebook. You had at one point in Warrior Week, and I'd left it as my kind of slogan, and it said, you can choose to eat from the ground on your belly like an animal.
Yes, I remember that.
And I never forgot that. And it was you can choose to stay down and make a choice, but someone has to have been exposed to the other side before it becomes the choice, like you're saying.
Correct.
But once they have, you can't go back. You can't go back because now it's me choosing to stay stupid and ignorant or trying to be,
And the most painful part of that is the guy that is on the floor eating it, like the food like an animal on the floor. By choice, right? He can stand up by choice. That's what he's teaching to his kids. Yeah. Because he's not going to ask his kids, hey, you guys stand up while I eat this shit on the floor. He's like, hey, I eat this shit on the floor. You guys need to eat this shit on the floor. That's where racism comes from, man. Like when you talk about, when you talk about tolerant racism, this is exactly what it is. Is when you go out there, you work in public, there's black guys, whatever the fuck guys, and like, okay, you just tolerate and you're polite. You come home at dinner table, you start using the N-word, you start calling people out, like that expression around the table and the kids and the wife contributing to it, that's eating on the fucking floor.
Yeah, 100%.
But then the guy that does that, he's doing it by choice, and he's also from a place of ignorance that you mentioned. Like, there's an awakening. If an awakening happens to him, he'll no longer continue that. But as long as he stay ignorant and gets support by his fucking ignorant wife, because she's also ignorant, injecting this, then what do you get? Ignorant kids.
as well as the people he's hanging out with.
As long as the people that are supporting the ignorance.
Absolutely, and it drives home the point of the the power of the most the closest people we're with, or the 5, or however the 3, the people that you're surrounding yourself with. That if you're not walking amongst similar kings, people with similar mentality to move forward and grow and expand.
And at the basis of all this, it just starts with a question, right? I mean, that's how you started. Your quest started way before fucking Warrior, bro.
Yeah.
Like you started, your quest started when you went in a fucking closet and started typing in. You're like, okay, fuck it, I'm back from war. What do I do now? Right? That's that's a question.
Yeah.
The answer to that question was the action, and everything else you took place, right? People like to fucking answer questions on a piece of paper, but the truth is, it doesn't really becomes knowledge. Oh, I've learned this because I answered it. No, you haven't learned shit. Your learning is not enough. Like, it's applied knowledge, man. That's what it's required.
Yeah.
And that's what you did, right? You started typing in, you started building this business or whatever that was, because you had a question. What am I going to do now?
Yeah. 100%. I knew that in those, and it's funny because you're taking me back there. I had no idea where it would end up going, of course. And it was a 5-cent pay-per-click ad, because this was back when pay-per-click was the thing to do. And I was showing up right next to the number 1 company in the world that does now what I do. They've reached out to me twice in the 15 years to try to buy me, or at least begin the conversation. Yeah. And from a 5-cent ad, and they're fucking like Nike. They're huge, huge. Yeah. But it was that question to say, what am I supposed to do? And I knew that there was more in me. Yes. I didn't exactly know what, but I knew it was helping. I knew it was teaching. Yes. And something that I felt skilled in doing. But you're absolutely right. It starts with that question.
So, we're gonna have you back on the show. There's so much more to tell. There's stories of, there's so much that our audience, our audience, like, dude, people want to fucking know, man. Like, you know what I mean? People want to know. Like, it doesn't have to be some fucking police fucking secret or some fucking wars. People want to know what the fuck is going on at war.
Right.
Like, I'll talk about my experience openly. When I was a kid, I was a child of war, and like, fucking, man, I'll tell you everything. I don't know, like, there's no privacy, man. It's like you have the fucking right to know what the fuck happened if I was a witness of it. The same goes inside of like the police life, man. Yeah. People have the fucking, like, people should know. Yeah. So that they don't eat around the fucking tables being ignorant. It is conversations like this and getting into the fucked up thing. Like, bro, one of the guys inside of the, he was, I think, 20 years a part of the SWAT team in Las Vegas. Yeah. I mean, he shared it here on the podcast, man. He said, like, walk into a room, a building, an apartment, we walk in, like, there's this fucked up person, man, that took his entire family and cut their pieces, like arms and legs, and switched people around on the floor. Like, literally cut the daughter's hand and his feet and the head, and switched it with his son. And he's like, this is the son I always wanted to have. This is the like. Imagine you walk into a scene like that, and you're like, what? Like, but, and this happened in like a really nice neighborhood. Like, you got 2 beautiful houses in the middle. There's this house, typical. Like, there is no way. So, like, this sense of awareness has to be there. That, bro, it doesn't mean you're in a neighborhood. You're in a nice neighborhood. It doesn't mean, like, you have to start knowing that there's a fucked up chip in human that, if activated by some other thing, it can actually be a danger to you. Yeah, and that's what you do. That's part of your, your training and your company. Yeah. What is it exactly that you guys offer in the training?
Sure. So we basically go into companies and teach their employees how to better deal with conflict. Yeah. Whether it's just a low-level angry customer that get arguments, all the way up to an aggressive attack. Yeah. And even an active shooter.
What is the name of the company?
Crisis Consultant Group.
Where can we find you?
Online, all over the place, but basically website, crisisconsultantgroup.com.
Crisis Consultant Group. Okay, so how long you been in
business? 15 years.
15 years. Awesome. Yeah. So, hey, if you have a business and this is something that you require, just check out Brendan's stuff. We'll have you back here for more conversation of, like, we'll dig into more war stories, and, like, it's not just to tell the fucking story, but it's to link it to the pattern of behaviors of men. right? Men overall. Men, right? This animal that is well behaved because of our consciousness. But then what happens when we subconsciously start going to a place where we've lost contact with all the other humans, right? People do fucked up shit when they're completely separated from all the other humans.
100%.
And it's sometimes by choice, and it's sometimes by, by default, man. By being that kid that's sitting around the table and he's saying his dad, being fucking ignorant.
And I know we're wrapping up here.
Yeah.
But even as simple, we're talking about these grotesque things. The part of the marriage that I was in that failed a couple years ago, I look back, there were times where I couldn't even driving somewhere, and I still sometimes this comes up. I have to know. I want to know exactly what the plan is. I was so fucking angry all the time and stressed out because of all the things we get stressed out of. That if the plan was, hey, we're going to Target and then we're going to go here and then we're coming back home. If there was a change to the plan while we were in the car and she's like, hey, can we stop over here? Fucking just set me the fuck off. And it would stress me out. She'd be like, what's the problem? I just want to stop at this other store.
No way, we have the
that's
program.
Not our plan. We have
the program.
Yeah, and the stress and the kids seeing that.
Yeah.
Seeing that. And that's the damage that you're causing, the ripple effect that the modern man, businessman, entrepreneur, married, doesn't even realize that ripple effect of the destruction.
So true.
I don't have to chop bodies up. I just chop their minds up with my shitty attitude.
So true.
Outlook.
And then, like, I've been there too. It's not that we see ourselves shit. We see ourselves in charge, right? Like, okay, I'm in charge of this right now, and suddenly there's another plan, and then you're like, okay, that plan is not secure. That plan has risk.
Yes.
It has to do with some kind of fucked up security. I've done that multiple times. It's like, hey, let's go to this place. I'm like, no, that's not a place for us because, that's a club and the blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, relax, man. We're just going to go and have fun.
Yeah.
Right?
We're going to IHOP.
No. Listen, that's not an environment for us. If you're this age, you should not be this. What if this happened? What if this happened? What if this happened? So by the time you're doing this, like, you are no longer attractive as a husband, man.
100%. And as a dad, there's that line between, paranoid and prepared.
Yes. Yes.
And making sure that we're not crossing over.
Some of us, you're like me, Dan is like me. We have this chip of alpha that comes in and overtakes. And there's a lot of work for us to do in order to calm that chip at home and kind of like go with the flow, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Be present at home. Listen to what they're saying. Like, one of the best example I can give you is like, hey, let's watch TV, right? With your wife or your significant, and like, let's watch this show. We're watching the show, and like, she's talking, and I'm fucking triggered because I want to know what the fuck is going on. Yeah. But then the whole point of saying let's watch it was to create connection. It's pretty cool that but it's not like you and I hanging and watching something. You and I hanging, we're both gonna fucking focus. Right. She wants to talk about herself. And so I'm like, yeah. And then, so I tolerate, and then I fucking snap. Yeah. I'm like, I want to fucking watch. Yeah. And then that's the alpha coming out and like dominating the situation. Yeah. And, that's good in business and that's good in sports. That's good in a lot of places. But at home, man, like that needs to be toned down, right? So a lot of people do what? Drink alcohol, take medicine to tone it down, but it's too much toned down to a point where they're fucking numb. Yeah. So, there are practices which is called being present, and it's not easy. Like some of the simple things like take your fucking phone, lock it in the fridge or whatever, man, just put it away, right? What if that takes place from 6 to 9? What else you gonna go? TV? Don't really use TV like for entertainment. You watch TV for years to be entertained, bro. Oh, yeah. Tonight, use it like don't follow the fucking show. Who gives a fuck? Right. Just use it as a tool to be present. Okay? Not easy. What I'm telling you is not easy. Yeah. Because it requires like it's like working out, man. It's like another set after another set.
Yeah.
Like, oh, now I have to be present. Okay, this set is finished. Now I gotta go to the next set.
Yeah.
But that's the work.
Well, and that's the crazy shit. If you said, "Hey, King, we got to go over here. There's
Yeah.
a fucking dealer. We got to take that building down."
Yeah.
All right, coach. let's
Yeah,
go."
no, bro.
You know, but you said, "Hey, go back, sit in a movie, and let your girl talk to you while the movie's going." Oh no, fuck that. Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy.
These little things, right?
Yeah.
And again, the tool is awareness.
Mm.
That's the only tool.
Mm.
And just like the work that we keep doing, that's why we keep like working and investing of the man that we want to become in 40 years. You and I, with gray hair, 40 years from now, we don't want to be telling stories of how many fucking buildings we took.
Right.
That's a chapter of the past.
Yeah.
We want to talk about how we helped our kids and like how present we were. I don't want to fucking talk about how many baseball games you've been with your son or the same, because bro, that's cliche.
Yeah. 100%.
Like, let's talk about some other shit. Yeah, you know what? I talked about some real shit. I told my son my experience at war.
Mm.
Okay, how did that go? Right? My son had the experience of cutting his own hair for the first time, like after like not ever cutting his hair, and he made the choice whether he's gonna cut it or not. Okay, things like that, man. Like these are not great amount of time, but they're very concentrated memories. And I going back, I can only recall a few concentrated memories with my dad. And like, my dad is great. I don't blame him. But you and I have now this awareness that wasn't present back in the days.
Right. 100%.
That wasn't. Because this kind of dialogue, this kind of conversation, people going live on Facebook and Instagram and social media and the entire, like, dude, the only thing that you could be aware of was newspaper.
Yeah.
And often newspaper was written by only a few for an interest of a few. But now with like almost you and I and like everybody else and making news, like we swim in a world of conversation and development, right? Development of conversation. And inside of that, like, that's why 40 years from now, you and I sitting here, we can talk about concentrated memories that we created for our loved ones. And imagine what they will remember. Yeah. They won't remember the fucking 80 baseball games you went at because you didn't really went for him. You went for yourself.
Perfect example. There was an exercise. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was part of Return of the King. But we were to share God. We were to play
the hand of God.
Yes, with a loved one.
Yeah.
And I was with my son. It's amazing you bring this now because I had forgotten about it. But we were in a hotel. I was giving him back to his mom the next day, kind of the way the schedule works. And I did that with him.
Yeah.
And he's 9 now. And I explained to him the process. Man, of course, I'm crying. And he's kind of like, Dad, why are you crying? But at the same time, that is an example right there of a moment in time. He's brought it up since then. Hey, Dad, remember that time?
He will never forget.
Yeah, and he felt the warmth.
Yeah.
He felt the energy in that moment. And for a child who had never experienced,
it's crazy.
And felt it.
Like it doesn't have to be complicated, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just walk in and I act stupid in front of my son, and he just laughs.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, okay, that
dude,
that works.
Yeah.
Like, let him fucking enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. Or I would say, let's watch some funny videos, and I'm laughing at shit that most probably I shouldn't laugh at, right? But he's laughing, so I'm like, you know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
Now I could live there and sit there and think about all the guilt and shame that comes with, oh, well, you shouldn't watch this shit on YouTube with your son. You shouldn't be teaching him to laugh at others. I can think about all that, right? But what if I put all that aside, the shoulds, and just be present? If he's laughing and I'm being like consumed in the joy of his laugh, and that's like 10 years of fucking therapy for me and better than any fucking drugs, why not?
Why not?
Because of the shoulds? He shouldn't watch these kind of videos on YouTube. Says what? Says who? If I'm not there, he's going to fucking watch it anyway. Let's just be real.
Right.
Like, let's just be real.
100%. The John Maxwell talks about. He says, I love listening to him, but he says, when you're young, you're clock driven, and as you get older, you're compass driven.
Fuck.
Right. And the idea that he talks about when you know your values, decisions are easy.
Yeah.
And if you're teaching your son, he can watch those things because it's out there. We can't protect him from all that shit, but he has the core values that he knows what is fiction, what's
correct,
and what's real. But 100%. I mean, the laughter with him, 10 years of therapy, 100%.
So I don't know. I'm learning as I move forward, right? This parenthood is he's the same age as your son, like step by step, man. Like we all learn about these things, and it's somebody else's blueprint in parenthood. It's not the same as you experiencing. I mean, I love listening, and like there was Joe Portman came in this podcast, and he's an absolute fucking great father, and he's just fantastic with kids. He has 5 kids himself, and 3 of the kids have actually what's that lung disease where the lungs collapse after like 10 or 50? Like I forgot the name of but basically he was told that his kids won't live past 15.
Leukemia?
No, it's just a lung thing.
Oh,
He was told that his kids won't live past 15. Imagine you have to fucking live with that, man. And the kids are 25, 30, and 33 now. And there was recently had this transplant for one of it's just crazy story. But he said something really interesting. He says, "Listen, you kids, they don't listen to your shit past 3 words. So you can go on and talk about all these teaching points. And past 3 words, not even. So sometimes some of the best ways just teach them with just a look or a smile. It's just like that they'll get. Past 3 words, dude, they're not even. They're immune to it. They're
That's so good, so good. Because we get caught in this thing. Oh, we're teaching this huge, big lesson.
Choose your first 3 words pretty wisely, man, and they'll fucking again. Yeah, that's really good. So anyway, Brandon, we'll have you back here on the show. It was a pleasure. We do need to talk about, the stories, and there's so much more to say. The final words here for our audience. If there's a man listening to this, and deep down inside, you have a message for him, in such that he could carry this message and forward somebody else. Right? We don't look for popularity on this podcast, but if the message has resonated with you, or the message that Brandon has shared has resonated with you, and you feel there's a man inside of your life that could benefit from this conversation from an awareness perspective, you just forward it to that guy. That's it. We don't ask him to subscribe or none of that. It doesn't matter. For him to hear that message. So what would that be, Brendan?
If you're in your own pit and the words that you're hearing resonate, then there's no reason to not. You've tried everything else. If they're anything like me, they've tried a million other things and it still hasn't worked. Give this a chance.
That's wise enough. Gentlemen, I want to thank Brandon for being our guest this week, and we'll have him on future shows to come. I want to also thank you for your time and the time you spend invested inside of this podcast. You can find out more about our podcast with Brendan King a few days from now on warriorweeknow.com with audios, videos, and as well as pictures and quotes. So have yourself a fantastic week, and we look forward to seeing you on the next show.